It's a daily practice. That means we do things to stay regulated with purpose and on purpose every day, and allowing your enthusiasm to show up and bringing your awesome self to the table. Because after all, as a gifted person, you're here to help bring something amazing to the world. It was not a conference call. You are the one meant solely to do the cool thing that's in your heart's desire. What to do when you feel off. Hi, friends, it's Diane here at Someone Gets Me, and today we're talking about that feeling of being off. I've been asked this question quite frequently lately about that kind of anhedonic or feeling off or a little bit ahead or a little bit behind of what's going on in the world, and all of these experiences that us intensely sensitive people have. Whether you call it neurodivergent or gifted or highly sensitive, I call it intensely sensitive when you have the intuition that goes with it. It's all that kind of ultra awareness and sensitivity we have to our inner landscape and what's going on in the world around us. There's so many things happening. And so, because I've been asked this recently by many people, what do I do? I feel off, or I'm not sure what to do. And some people are trying to turn to chat GPT or an AI solution to get an external answer. And really the answer's inside. I always tell the story that if you've lost your keys while you're bringing in the groceries one day, you're bringing them in and you can't find the keys now, right? To the car. And you go looking everywhere. You're out in the lawn, you're in the car, you're all over the place looking for these keys outside. And then you realize that when you look inside, the keys are in the freezer. They've been inside all along. So the keys that unlock the places where we feel stuck, the places where we feel off, the answers are on the inside. Yes, the outside world can show us information. And I see myself as an intuitive, gifted mentor as being like jumper cables. What I know about every person I work with is their answers are brewing in there. They may not understand them yet. They may not see them yet. There might be some things we have to separate and understand before we can get to the deeper meaning of things. But all of us inherently have within us what we need to do to handle our life, whatever that looks like. And I believe that. So when I'm working with my people, or I'm like in the retreat I'm preparing for now that we're going to do in January, it's going to all be about how do we do this? And one of the things that is so important is that we have a sense of community, of people who understand us, at least a majority of us, right? And people who we're safe to be around. So if we're not safe, it's hard to be our real selves. We start masking, we hide in different ways, and that doesn't help anything. So we want to have people around us who are safe. In fact, I have somebody who lives near me here, and our dogs kind of know each other. And this woman is really not emotionally safe. She likes to micromanage and passive aggressively kind of bully, all in that right fighting kind of way. And my sensitive self has a hard time with that energy that feels very prickly. And so you probably have experiences and people in your world sometimes that you have to decide, or am I going to handle the prickly energy, or am I going to be okay the way I am? Or am I going to find other safe people? So I try to be that safe person and listen for other people and kind of sit with them. Lately, I've had some people that I know having a hard time in life with different kinds of family emergencies and other things like that. And I've just tried to be present for them, listen and be aware. Because the two things we want more than anything in the world is to be loved, cared about, and heard. And so sometimes the best thing you can do is just listen and hear the person. Sometimes you can do when you're feeling off is talk to somebody who you know is safe, who will just hear you without trying to fix you, without trying to change you, but validate who you are as a human being going through whatever it is you're going through. Now, if you want their advice or help, ask for it. But it's important, if you're the listener, to not offer something that's not asked for, because that's a boundary violation. So here's what you look like when you're off, okay? It's quite interesting. I'm just going to give you some examples because sometimes people don't know what the off part means. It's you could say dysregulated. People use that phrase a lot lately. Anxiety is a form of being off, where we're all hyper and shaky. Now, my mother had an anxiety disorder, and she would just lay on the floor with her heart beating and palpitating until it stopped. What I know is that like 90% or more of the Western culture is magnesium deficient. And if you're deficient in magnesium, your body's going to have some anxiety because it's wanting those minerals so bad. So some of us just might have that vibration of anxiety simply because our nutrition is off. Even if we think we're eating healthy food, we're starting to see that some of the healthy food has been so processed it's not as healthy as we think it is. So it's really takes some investigation of where that anxiety is coming from. It could be an old belief system that's trying to show up so you can rectify it and move past the limiting thing. So there's lots of ways that that could be. It could actually be a chemical imbalance. It could be a mental thing where you're creating the anxiety. So that's where discernment and working with a professional will help you decide or understand what's happening. Another way you can tell that you're all dysregulated is you say too much, oversharing. I had a friend of mine years ago, and we could get in the elevator on the first floor. In fact, it happened in a hotel when we were at a chaplain training, and somebody said, "Hi, good afternoon. How are you?" And by the time we got to the fifth floor, where our room was, she had told pretty much the whole story of how we met each other, how we know each other, that we're from different states, and why we were in Phoenix, and blah, 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 blah. They had the whole history. She was oversharing information when really the stranger just said, "How are you?" And so, yes, you can say a little bit more than fine or good, but the entire story of how we know each other and why we're there in that elevator, that's a little bit over the top, right? They didn't ask for that. So if you find yourself oversharing, I teach a lot, all the leaders that I work with a lot of the times, if they're talking too much, it's the same thing for parents. If you're talking too much, you're going to lose the audience. You're going to lose your children. You're going to lose your audience, right? Whoever you're talking to. So see if you can share your ideas in 5-word sentences and no more than 5 sentences. So that's like 25 words. Can you deliver the essence of your message in that short, brief amount, 25 words? Can you do it? If you're oversharing and you feel that need, that pushing, that drive to keep going and sharing and blah and going, I just hear the blah 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 like the Charlie Brown thing teacher going over and over. You're dysregulated. You're off, whether you know it or not. Another way you can tell is with scattered attention. And now that's different than going from thing to thing to thing. Scattered means I really can't control what's happening and it's all over the place. That's a sign of ADHD. It's common in gifted people, and it's very common in people who are dysregulated. So if you have ADHD and you're gifted and you're stressed out, you're probably going to have scattered attention. So we want to practice breathing and focusing and grounding and learning ways to come back into our body and into our space. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. And then there's things like numbing out, completely checking out and not having any feeling, or having flooding where you have all the feelings. And so some of the people I work with have all the feelings all at once. And we want to teach how to let those feelings flow through and then come down to a place that's a nice equilibrium. Or if somebody's numbing out and they're having any feelings, how you can kind of unfreeze them, the feelings, so that you can then have the experience that's important for your life. Another big way you can tell that you're off is very, very emotionally sensitive to what you perceive as rejection, like a sensitivity to rejection or the perception of it. It's not always even that, because sometimes people are just doing their thing. They're not even paying attention to you, but you think that they're rejecting you because we're being oversensitive, because we are highly empathic. We're people that live on a different plane, and it just is difficult sometimes. So you're dysregulated if every time you turn around, it really looks like people are rejecting you and you're sensitive to that, more so than in other times. And the last one of these ways you can tell you're off is with having trigger anger outbursts, like small things that wouldn't otherwise trigger you. You're screaming and yelling or having a meltdown or a temper tantrum, or I call it a tolerance break. Those kind of anger outbursts say something's not right with the nervous system. It's off somehow, and it's showing up in your physical body and in your behavior. So a lot of times people have those anger outbursts when they're dysregulated, and they do stupid things. They hit their animals, they harm their children, they harm themselves, they harm other people. They act recklessly. They do things that they regret later. So I think it's important that we understand what we look like when we are dysregulated. So think about yourself for a minute. What do you look like when you're dysregulated? And then what do you do to soothe yourself? And then what does regulation look like? Because a lot of times people will come to me and say, Dianne, I'm dysregulated. And I'm like, okay, tell me about it. And they'll tell me. And I hear some of the symptoms, but I also hear other things. And then I say, well, how do you know when you are regulated? What's your evidence to tell you when you are regulated? Now, for some people who are starting their wellness journey, they may not have felt regulated since they were children or maybe teenagers. And so they really don't even know what it is. I had this young woman I was working with. She was in her late 20s and really amazing, gifted healer. And one of the things that happened when we did some safe and sound protocol with her was she didn't know how to handle what she was labeling boredom, because she has had, her system had always been vibrating at a way where she was always trying to protect herself. So she was always escalated somehow underneath. And then when we finally got that part of her nervous system to calm down, it felt boring to her. She didn't know that that meant peace and calm. She had to redefine the words she uses and her experience of how she's feeling, because she'd never had it before, or at least she didn't remember. And so now she has that feeling, and she remembers, and she knows how to get there. So sometimes we learn these powerful things in very unexpected ways. So ways we soothe ourselves, they're things like tapping, playing with little fidget things. I have them sitting right here. These are magnetized, so I can play with them. I can flip them around. I can do stuff whether the person I'm talking to sees them or not. So you don't see them, but I'm still playing with it. It's right here. And I also have other different ways to soothe ourselves. When I was younger, I used to rub the tops of my legs, right above my knee. It felt very reassuring to do that. In fact, sometimes people would ask me if my knees were hurting, and I would say no. And I didn't realize back then that's what it was that I was naturally doing to help ground myself and feel soothed. Or you could hug a tree. You could go stand barefoot on Mother Earth. You could squeeze one of those stress balls. I have several of them all around. I don't even have one sitting out now, which is shocking because I have them everywhere. And I squeeze a stress ball. Well, here's one that kind of looks like a stress ball. So I squeeze the stress ball, and that helps. That squeezing motion helps get the nervous system back in order, or remind it that we don't want to be off anymore. We want to be in flow and alignment. Another thing you can do is hum. Humming does really, really well. And of course, deep breathing, where you're really expanding your diaphragm on the inhale and sucking it in really far on the exhale, so that things can go back and forth, and you can remind yourself who you are and get into your body. It's so important to do that. So there's all kinds of things to do. Some people kind of wiggle their fingers or wiggle their toes and do different things to help themselves feel better. Doodling works really well. You can doodle either circles or infinity signs, really help, because it's crossing the center line of the body. There's so many things. So you do those actions to help yourself feel in flow or alignment. I like to think of it more as alignment that then gets the flow going. So when we're aligned in our mind, our heart, and our gut, right? When we're aligned and the flow is going, like I imagine, like this beautiful flow going up and down right in front of our spine. When that all is happening, it's easy for us to flow into the world and do what is meant for us to do. Our relationships are better. Our sleep is better. Our digestion is better. Our entire system works at a much more effective and efficient capacity. And so here's what you look like when you get regulated. This is what you look like when you're on instead of off. You're a great leader. You're a leader, whether it's by position or not. People look to you for guidance, for understanding, for leadership. And so, You notice that when you go in a room, or maybe you're joining a new club or something. I've done this so many times where I join a club thinking I'm just going to be in the audience. And then it's not very long into it. Then I'm on the board or getting appointed for something or whatever. And I didn't go in looking for that. I went in just to be part of the audience. But it's part of what happens when you have a neurodivergent gifted person's energy in flow. It's obvious to the others. And then you have things like passion showing up and vision showing up, and what's emerging through you becomes, I'm getting goosebumps, it becomes just unmistakably beautiful and harmonious, and there's effort in it, but it feels effortless in how it shows up. And then, of course, your curiosity goes off the chain. We're all curious by nature anyway. Those of us who are neurodivergent, we're curious and we ask questions, but then your curiosity is even more available to you. I'm sure you've had times where you felt off, where you didn't feel curious, or you didn't really want to look into things that you wanted to, but you couldn't do it, right? There was a disconnect. Well, when you're regulated, that disconnect is not happening. So you have that flow going. The other thing that I really think is fun when we're regulated is that we have spontaneity and enthusiasm for life, that we'll do something that's fun without overthinking. We feel enthusiastic. Life feels good to us. We're happy and we want to be engaged. Because sometimes being an introvert like I am and very intensely sensitive and gifted, sometimes my engagement especially is with myself or maybe with my dog, because too many people is too much stimulation. So there's all kinds of ways for us to know when we are regulated. And so one of the things that you can do to help yourself when you're off, or you wonder if you're off or you feel off, is to think about these qualities I'm describing. Am I having innovation and curiosity? Do I feel the passion for my life like I would like to? Is my sense of empathy alive and present, where people in my world know that I am there and active listening and caring about them? Am I feeling self-empowered, where I'm standing in my authority, my spiritual authority? I know who I am and I can operate from that place. Am I doing that? Am I able to do that beyond just knowing it in my head? Can my actions and my words and my gut all line up with my head? And then, of course, if you get up, which I do sometimes after a bad dream or a bad night's sleep or difficulty somehow, dysregulated, and I have all these emotions or no emotions, or sometimes I feel anxiety and sometimes I just zone out. And so when I notice those patterns, I know now what to do. I can do a self-soothing activity, right? I can sew, or I can quilt, or I can talk to a friend so I feel heard. I can rub my knees. I can hug myself. I can take a warm bath. There are all kinds of things that we can do to help our nervous system calm down so that we can then feel the alignment, and then the flow begins again, and we feel our curiosity coming back. We feel our excitement for life and our enthusiasm re-emerging. We become more spontaneous and we can advocate for ourselves in meaningful ways. So what we do when we're off, we do things that regulate our nervous system. We also know why we're dysregulated and how it looks when we are regulated. Because if we don't know what the end goal looks like, or we don't know what the picture is, or the experiences of where we're headed, you might be regulated and not know it. I've had people do that with me, ask me about it. And I'm like, well, you're describing regulation to me. So where did you get that you're dysregulated? And they're like, I just thought I was. Sometimes we misassign things to us. So it's so important to slow down for a minute. Pay attention to your experience in life. How is life landing on you? How are you entering into the world? And just notice, pay attention with loving kindness. It's not a judgment, it's an observation. So that you can then say, okay, well, I'm feeling a little off. Here are the things that I can do to feel more regulated. And it's a gradient. Sometimes I'm really dysregulated and I feel really angry and anxious and irritable, and I don't even like being in my own skin when I feel that way. And then I do the things to help myself get more grounded. more regulated. I can do safe and sound protocol. I can take a warm bath. I can go for a walk with my dog. I can hug a tree. This morning at 4 o'clock, I was outside glorifying in the full moon. It was a full moon this morning. It was so beautiful. And the way the macro kind of clouds were covering it, it was just the most delightful experience. And I love the moon. And so that immediately, when I started breathing and just appreciating the elegant simplicity of Mother Nature herself, instantly I could feel myself regulate. Now, I wasn't really dysregulated, but I had just gotten up and the dog needed to go out and I was a little discombobulated. And still, that's a little off. So, by connecting with nature in a meaningful way to you, you then take a deep breath, you relax your shoulders, you drop your jaw, and you allow yourself to be aligned and connected. And that's how you do it. It's not a one and done thing, folks. You just don't master what I just said and write it all down in a book and have it in your head, and that's it. It's a daily practice. That means we do things to stay regulated with purpose and on purpose every day. There's no vacations. No, it's not. You don't get to take off a vacation or a holiday. You get to do it every day. You get to practice breathing and allowing your enthusiasm to show up and bringing your awesome self to the table. Because after all, as a gifted person, you're here to help bring something amazing to the world. It was not a conference call. You are the one meant solely to do the cool thing that's in your heart's desire. Nobody else. I know, it's so exciting. It's a little daunting sometimes too, but it's mostly exciting. So if you want any conversation about all this or some ideas beyond what I'm sharing, because there's so many more, feel free to schedule a get to know you call, and I'll be happy to talk about this some more with you or help you find your way to get regulated. Whatever it is, I'm totally good. So what I want you to know is that I believe that you are here with a mighty purpose on purpose. I believe that you are beautiful, you are lovable, and you are very capable. And I believe that you're hearing all of this amazing information to remind you of your goodness and your greatness, that beautiful essence that is you. So remember to put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there and let your light shine. And remember, you are an amazing human being. Don't tell yourself anything any differently. And if you're having a hard time, give me a call. I'm happy to help you. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, this is Dianne saying, be well.